Hey guys, what's going on with these Bitcoin Karens? Ever since the Bitcoin conference recently, Twitter seems to be going fucking nuts, Joel. I don't know what's going on, but it seems to be there's a lot of infighting going on at the moment with people bitching about this and that and the other, and people are a little bit sensitive at the moment in the space. Would you agree?
Ian, did you just assume that I think of something? No, obviously not.
Assuming makes an ass out of you and me, Joel. That's what they say,
Yeah.
right? Should we start again?
No, no. That's fine. That's fine. Obviously, we keep that in.
Fine, fair enough.
I don't know what it is. It's usually I've seen this in like other bear markets or in other phases of like the Bitcoin evolution, shall we call
Mm,
it? That for some reason at one point we just start these infights, and it's funnily enough, it's always the same thing. Like something comes up that's controversial. This time around, it was ordinals and the debate between a
yeah.
few people online, on stage, sorry, and later on online, uh, and it just spirals out of control. And you sort of see it everywhere. It's not just on Bitcoin Twitter, on
Mm.
conferences. It's literally we witnessed this last time in like a Telegram chat, so it's quite weird.
Yeah, I think the Ordinals debate, the Great Ordinals debate, I think it was called on YouTube. I think that was the catalyst or the straw that broke the camel's back because it seems ever
Mm.
since then people are just sort of like bursting through the seams of on the back of what's happened in the Ordinals debate with Udi trolling all the laser eyes and things like that, and there was a bit of tension between Foss and Udi, and we covered an episode about that, and we spoke about whether it's a culture war within Bitcoin, and we pretty much came to the consensus that maybe it's not, maybe it's just an ego situation in that case. But I'm starting to see an emergence of people coming out of the woodwork with some sensationalist things, some ideas and ideologies that has got nothing to do with Bitcoin in any way whatsoever. Some of it has, but most of it
Mm.
is just all about people sort of trolling each other at the moment. And there was a little bit of an argument on the back of a discussion on one of our Telegram groups where there was question as to whether or not there are enough women in Bitcoin and why that's the case. And what I did, I went straight on to Twitter, and obviously my persona being questioning Bitcoin, just asked that question publicly. Why? I think I wrote something along the lines of, was it why are there fewer women in Bitcoin than men? And it just goes to show that this space at the moment is quite sensitive to questions that involve any kind of politics or debate that's ongoing in the fiat world, and it's coming
Mm.
into the Bitcoin space. And I think people are trying to fight out their own ideologies within an apolitical system. But that's my opinion.
I would say so. And you know, this is the disadvantage, if you think about it, of grassroots movements. If you've got no leader in charge or no centralized entity, it sort of attracts people who would usually be attracted to these kind of things. And what I mean by this is Bitcoin is many things for most people out there. And I'm really talking about normies who get into Bitcoin because of the investment aspect. It's a financial product first, meaning they either compare it to a stock that they own, potentially their portfolio that they have, or they compare it to, you know, something they might want to invest in to get a quick return. And
Right.
if you look at it this way, these industries are usually quite male dominated. This is just pure
Mm-hmm.
statistics. I'm not stating anything else but that. If you look at like TradFi world, trading world, also, if you look in the whole sort of fintech world, a lot of the personas that drive these innovations are men, particularly sort of the mid, I'd say, 20s to maybe mid 40s. That's sort of the main demographic there. And I actually did look it up on Statista a couple of
Okay.
weeks back for another article.
Mm.
And if you then go into the second layer, Bitcoin is also technology. And what is the technology industry known for? To be quite male dominated as well. So I think if I just break down these components from this aspect, you do get obviously a quite a big male dominance. Having said that though, if I look about particular niches, let's take Bitcoin creatives, for example, you know, podcasters, people who create merchandising and stuff.
Well,
All of
just
the
look at you
people
and
I
me. Last time I checked, we're both men, right?
No, we're not that creative, Ian. We just talk shit on a podcast. That's something else. But if you think about it, all of the people that do a lot of merchandising, stuff, like, you know, getting out there, presenting, there is quite a big emergence of women coming into the space as well, who are doing their own thing, you know, contributing to the Women in Bitcoin event, for example, in Miami. Or I'm thinking about people like Lena Seiche, who's doing like the Little Hodler, and she's also very creative. Or what's the name of the other German artist? I think it's also just Lena does art or something like this. She's also German, does the custom sneakers and things. There's a lot of women creators in the German-speaking part of the Bitcoin landscape. So I think, yes, it's still dominated, but you do see these breakouts. And whether hardcore OGs or laser-eyed maxis like it or not, things like NFTs, who are mainly art-driven, if you like the stuff that's being put in them, actually gain a lot of traction with women as well. You saw that in the whole NFT boom a couple of years back as well. So yes, the male dominance, I say, is arguably there, but you do see it break in the pattern. And my opinion is, instead of focusing on this, like, oh, we should do like, you know, the 50-50 split, and like, it's not succeeded until a lot of women get in there and stuff like this. We should actually focus on these groups and strengthen them, because it just takes time until we get everyone on board. And if we get everyone in the world on board, obviously men lose out because more women live on the world.
That's true. And look, you're never going to get a space where there's complete 50-50. And you can break down the demographics in any way, which way you like. You're never going to get an exact 50-50 in any group. And I think, yeah, you're right in the sense that, particularly because I think most people, and through our experience with talking to people about their Bitcoin rabbit hole story, a lot of them got into it because they've seen a potential financial opportunity here. And the dominance within that financial industry happens to be men. But I think the longer you spend down this Bitcoin rabbit hole and the further you go down it, the more you realize it's more than just a financial instrument. Bitcoin is a lot more deeper than that. And I think people are starting to wake up to that, other than men, and you know that people can see the opportunities that Bitcoin can bring to humanity as a whole, because of the whole decentralized nature of it and the consensus rules and all that kind of stuff. So I think over time, more women are going to be coming into Bitcoin, and I think you're starting to see that more now. I think there is a sudden surge with women coming into Bitcoin, which I celebrate, because Bitcoin's for everyone, right? And the more people in it with the more ideas and the more way to approach things, the better. And I keep remembering about, because I was watching back the Jason Meyer video that we did, that's out now, guys, released this week. So give it a watch. And he talks about progressors coming and emerging within the Bitcoin space, and because the representation for progressors was lacking somewhat until recently. And Jason's obviously worked very hard at releasing the book Progressive's Case for Bitcoin, and he talks about you know, the liberal ideology, and the likes of Elizabeth Warren, who's obviously anti-Bitcoin, but still shares like this ideology of being a liberal. And he's sort of essentially saying that no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, if you see it through a Bitcoin lens, it changes your perspective entirely. And there needs to be this kind of less of a bipartisan approach, because I think you get a lot of people within the Bitcoin space who either sit on the right to center or left to center. And I think that's where things start to get a little bit tense, and that's where arguments start to come out within the Bitcoin space, because Bitcoin is obviously apolitical, it doesn't give a shit and all that, and it's the people within it that do. And the more people that are coming in and fighting it out within the Bitcoin space, that can then evolve and change things over time. And it got me thinking a little bit, and I know I'm rambling, so stay with me, and feel free to sort of like, you know, interrupt me or give me your opinion on this.
Keep going.
But essentially, like, it got me thinking, and maybe it's because I was a little bit stoned last night when I was thinking this. But over time, as more and more people come into Bitcoin, will there actually be such a thing as left and right in the way that we know it? Will it be a little bit more kind of ambiguous and grey? Because there are parts of me that are liberal, there are parts of me that are not so liberal, and you know, everyone's different, everyone's diverse in their own ideology, but you have to, it seems to be the political structure of things, you seem to have to need to put yourself in a pigeonhole and identify as that thing when that's not necessarily the case, because that's the narrative that's been given to you by the politicians. So, you know, with people coming in and sharing their ideas and implementing it within the Bitcoin space, over time, people's mindset will change. That's my mindset anyway. Maybe I was just stoned as fuck. But what do you think, Joel?
Could be. No, obviously. I'm thinking, what can I say now before I need to cut stuff? You actually sparked a few ideas there. So, one, the whole party thing. I think we can say this as Europeans. The fucking partisan thing is being driven by America. If you're an American viewer of the show or listener, I'm sorry, that's just a fact. You guys over-politicize everything, down to things like, is water healthy for you or not? There's always going to be one side of the spectrum, and if you then think about it and look at the issue at hand, you actually do shit to solve it. Like, that's generally from a European perspective, and I know we're going to get called out for this, that has very much to be said. If you look behind this, it's just like you say, Ian, do we really need a multi-party world system, whatever? Or is it enough that we can just all agree on one thing, that being Bitcoin, or whatever else it might be, and build based around that? So I think that's one thing. And then the second thing that came to mind when you spoke about the diversity and such, if I speak to the women I meet at meetups or at conferences, or I've met through stuff like the Orange Pill app, a lot of them actually tell me I'm kind of like, you know...
Is it a dating app now?
I don't know. Could be. I actually saw a tweet of a guy today that did manage to set up a first date. So I think Matteo and the team sort of needs to rethink what they're doing there. Well, they got the domains, like it's a dating app thing, so they're sort of halfway there. Fun note, the more women we comment, the more dating apps on Bitcoin you'll find. So there you go, right? But the second thing that came to mind was a lot of them tell me, you know, I'm not very public because I either live in a society where women are straight up not allowed to have money. Think about, you know, Iran, Afghanistan, all of these countries. Or they kind of want to keep it to themselves because they don't put a lot of emphasis on shouting from the rooftops that, you know, you need to buy Bitcoin or that they're in a Bitcoiner or whatever. And I do actually have a sneaky feeling that a lot of more women are involved in Bitcoin, but sort of just stay back. And it's sort of the point you brought up in that Telegram chat, where often at times, especially if like couples have kids, both of them are engaged in Bitcoin. It's usually the man that goes to meetups and these things first to sort of check it out, maybe also to see, is it safe to go? And then the women sort of gradually follow because they take some time to analyze these things. We men, we basically just see things and do, right? They sort of take the more scientific approach, let's call it that. And I think that blends into this whole discussion. But it's like you say, at the end of the day, if everyone combines on that standard, will we really need that thinking anymore? Or can we just embrace the fact that we are Bitcoiners with different beliefs, different backgrounds, different socio-ecological stands, and that we're actually here to make the world a better place through whatever we do with Bitcoin, whether that be hodl it, spend it, or build new apps on it?
There's another perspective to look at this, and I got a comment on my tweet about the women in the Bitcoin space from Nicholas Gregory, who's part of the Civ Kit with Ray Youssef. And
how do you get these people to engage with you all the time? Every time I see a tweet of you, like a legend is responding.
Maybe I just wind people up enough for them to engage with me. But he said the whole point of Bitcoin is that we should not know that. And that's a good point, because obviously as we become more anonymous, more private with non-KYC entries into Bitcoin, we won't have those statistics on who owns what Bitcoin, and it raises the question: does it matter who it is and what they identify as, male, female, you know, adult, grandma, whatever? You know, it doesn't matter, because, you know, as long as you've got Bitcoin, that's it. You're in the Bitcoin space. So there's that, you know, that got me thinking, and that's a very good point, because obviously the more we start to reclaim our privacy, because we are so conditioned, I think, to like just give away our data and just like know that it's going to be collected as some kind of way to target us for consumerism, but also to sort of like tag us of where we are as well. So that's an interesting point of view.
Definitely. And, if you think about it, you don't need to know. I think someone either in the replies on Twitter or somewhere else posted this. If I buy Bitcoin with a Bitcoin broker or an exchange or whatever in person, does the other side care if I identify as a man, woman, or whatever? No, it doesn't. It just knows I want to buy Bitcoin, possibly for a certain price or a certain way, depending how you pay for it. And that's it. And I think we'll slowly, probably with things like SIFKit, but also other layer solutions and new merchants, get into this way where it will not be know your customer, it will be know your peers or know your identifier, I call it this. Because if you and I do a peer-to-peer trade, I don't need to give you my name. You don't need to give me your name. We could just come up with a synonym or a username or whatever and use it this way to identify, is it really the person I was speaking to previously to make that trade, right? So I think more of these concepts creep into thanks to Bitcoin, and the more that creeps in, the more sort of we recondition us or ourselves to know that this is a possibility, because up until now, we just thought, I've got to hand over my passport data to open this bank account or to buy Bitcoin or whatever. So it's a really weird thing if you think about it, how much we were willing to give up and how much we're actually able to reclaim with Bitcoin.
Right. And it essentially makes identity irrelevant when you're using Bitcoin. I mean, identity will be relevant out in the real world when you're interacting with people day to day, but when you're transacting from one Bitcoin address to another, does identity really matter? Does it matter what the color of your skin is or what you've got between your legs? It doesn't, does it really?
Absolutely not. And even if you think about it further, look at stuff like the Lightning Network. The most mundane thing that happens in a transaction is you either copy and paste a very long string of numbers and letters, or you scan a QR code. That's it. There's nothing more involved. Maybe a couple of wallets and like how the whole thing operates. But even there, like my Lightning node doesn't really know why I'm in here, what I do. The only thing it does know is liquidity in the channels and inbound and outbound liquidity to sort of manage if the tech is working. And even if you expand beyond that, there are other layer 2 solutions popping up, like Arc, for example, or even if you look at Nostr, like Nostr didn't ask me what I do, it just provided my public and private key. So looking, I think, at the world from a Bitcoin landscape, and particularly like the whole cryptographic aspect, it really is a string of numbers, and that's all it needs. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
I've noticed a couple of narratives out there recently about people calling for rolling back the taproot and stuff in Bitcoin. But then I'm like, hold on, if you really truly understood and knew what Bitcoin was, then you would understand that it's a free market thing, and the market is deciding where it's going. So you can either get off the train or just go along with it, right? So change it to something else and go down the fucking BSV route if you want. These things are happening, and we need to understand and embrace these things. And this is how obviously the whole ordinals debate has come on with things, and obviously that's kind of split a divide amongst the Bitcoin ecosystem and the people using Bitcoin. And I got thinking a little bit more about the ordinals thing, because ultimately it's just like a free market thing. It's happening, we need to accept it's happening, and we need to develop and add and adjust accordingly. If we're worried about the whole fee size and all that kind of stuff, then we need to sort of like think critically about that.
But even the whole fee size thing, we all knew at one point on-chain is going to get expensive. This was clear from at least when I tried, from the get-go, or like when you actually start looking into.
So are you saying it's like a bear it's like a bear mindset, like keep it low type thing?
I wouldn't call it that. I think I get it back to time preference. People are so focused about what am I paying now at this moment, where maybe need to get this on-chain transaction true. But in the greater scope of things, maybe this will be relatively cheap. And I don't agree with Michael Saylor on a lot of things, as you know, but he had a very good quote in, I think, his interview with Peter McCormack, where he said, if you think about the Bitcoin blockchain on-chain now as something like real estate, where to be able to be part of that chain, you'll need to pay a certain commission. In real estate, where you buy houses up into the millions, everyone agreed that for a broker or a dealer or whatever, the going rate is up to 6% of whatever the sale will be. So if you buy a house for $100,000, sorry, that'd be a cheap house. Nowhere near anywhere in London. You would pay the 6% on that. And if Bitcoin becomes so huge to a point where on-chain is the same thing, so you essentially pay a price on your transaction. If you do a transaction of like 100K and you pay 6% on that, compare that to the normal fiat world, you would do that immediately, knowing that the transaction goes through in the next 10 minutes on average. So if you think about it from that perspective, I think the whole debate about like fees and ordinals is silly. And I'm not a fan of like the NFT stuff. I do see some relatively small use cases where you can use it, but it incentivizes miners to keep going. They were actually redeemed in the past couple of months. I think Ordinals just surpassed 10 million inscriptions, so they made a good buck or chunk of money on there. And it shows that you can build on Bitcoin. Is it perfect? No. Is it annoying that like BSV dickheads come in and basically, created the BRC20 stuff and things? Obviously not. But time will tell if they survive. And if not, then it was a short period of time where miners were rewarded. And that's the whole thing, right? Their fucking block reward gets rewarded every 4 years.
The market will dictate its success, right? Either people are going to use it or not. That's what it comes down to. And I was watching a video about, was it the Bitcoin University earlier today about ordinals, and something that actually opened my eyes up a little bit to the whole thing is having an irreputable thing on the ordinals, on the blockchain. And it got me thinking, like, with this, in this day and age of misinformation and stuff, and people and things getting adjusted and altered, having something on the blockchain that is irrefutable and will not be able to be changed is valuable, surely. So if you've got like a document with some information on it that is vital to be, like if we can upload the Bitcoin white paper to ordinals, for example, and there it is forever unaltered. So it could secure information that we can keep indefinitely. What do you think about that? Is that something that's the way you see a potential value in it?
I know where
you're talking nonsense.
No, I don't think so. I know where you're going. The only thing I don't like about this is it turns the blockchain, which is a dumb thing, just a public ledger that records everything that's being done on that network, into a file storage solution. And I think that's not what it's supposed to be. However, what I like is if you really need to inscribe something forever, the option is there. What I personally believe is we'll see a couple of side chains that will probably do something different, similar. And if you want, Noster, just saying, is a communications protocol built into the Bitcoin landscape, which would allow you to store these information as well. So I think it's not going to be that like Ordinals becomes like the Google Drive of the Bitcoin blockchain. Let's say it very easy. Or the Dropbox of the Bitcoin blockchain, but it will become a way to keep something on this ledger forever, which, again, I think it goes down to principles. Satoshi's message in the Genesis block, technically speaking, is that, right? So we had this capability forever. I just think it will take some time until better applications are built out of this. Because if you did the whole ordinals thing, it's clunky as fuck. You now pay, I think, 180, maybe 190 bucks to inscribe something. You'll need to go back and forth with a couple of things. So it's not that easy that like everyone can do it. But, again, time will tell. If it sticks around and miners find a new way to profit off that and like keep the machines running, I'm happy. I don't care what happens with the other end. And the whole scamming thing with like the BRC20 token, the thing, I think that will just ease itself out like it always has in the past.
You mentioned something earlier at the beginning of the episode and saying this is like familiar landscape at the moment with all these Karens and they're bickering at the end of a bear market. Do you want to say a little bit more about that before we finish the episode?
Yeah, sure. So you always see this in the Bitcoin bear markets at the end of the bear markets, where essentially we fought off everything we could fight off. Shitcoins going to bust, sort of the latest trends going down the bin. And in the end, the only thing that's left over is sort of attacking each other and sort of looking at what everyone has done wrong. And everyone makes mistakes, so you'll always find something to attack. I mean, same with us. Like, there'll probably be a time where we'll be called out for having an opinion, but that's life, guys. And you just I've seen this over and over for like the 1, 2, 3, possibly fourth, maybe fifth time, depending how you define the bear markets, I guess. And it will happen every time again, because, it's egos fighting egos. We've talked about it in our last YouTube
kind
video.
Of puffing their chests out and sort of
Exactly.
like digging their heels in, ready for the next bull run.
I think what's important for you, if this is your first bear market, and you sort of are stuck in these talks, well, the world will continue to sort of spin. Let me get this right. I need to cut that. The world will continue to spin. People will still be building, and just don't get baited into these discussions, because it's silly. It's time wasting. The moment you would see that person you would discuss with at a meetup or at a conference, you would talk with them anyway. So just move on, forget about this. The less you give people who are seeking that validation and that confrontation stuff,
or attention,
the better. Yeah, exactly.
People are braver behind the keyboard than they are in real life, aren't they?
Totally.
Yeah. So, but anyway, thanks for joining us today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you a Bitcoin Karen? Let us know. And what do you think about the end of the bear market? Are we right in our prediction? And when are we going to get this bull run going? Or are we already in a bull run? Let us know. Who have we got coming up next week? We've got Ivan Makandonsky, right? In our next episode. So watch out for him. It was a really fascinating episode. Don't forget to subscribe in wherever the button is that it may be. And we'll look out for you in Prague and come and say hello. So see you later, guys.